So to start off,
Yes.
I have no theological studies training, no. Just what I studied in the seminary. As I told you all, I joined the seminary with maths, physics, chemistry, and then after being ordained, I did social science. So I've never really studied theology. So don't look at me as surprised, but I can talk about theology just as you can talk about theology.
But you did theology for your priesthood.
Priesthood. But that's many years ago, 45 years ago.
Okay.
So theology is always a reflection, a faith reflection. So
Yes.
Father Amalor will, Father Arukisami will do that much more in detail. But you can't start reflecting in faith without some preliminary. You can't enter this room without passing through some other room, all right? Can't come straight into this room. So what are the steps you need to follow in order to begin reflecting in faith? That's what theology is about. So there are a couple of steps which we worked out with the Asian bishops. What are those steps?
I'll be hiding. I have to hide.
So bishops, many of the bishops are like me, you know. They have only studied theology in the seminary, and then they became bishops. So when I was asked to be their secretary, my job was to help the bishops in simple language to reflect on what God is doing in their lives, what God is doing among the poor, what God is doing in history. So that is the reflection, a reflection in faith. So we'll call, Father Arukisami will talk about theology. My word for it is a simple word, faith reflection. How do we reflect in faith on everything? Our whole life, our life experiences, everything. So we have, the process is called the pastoral spiral. What's the difference between a spiral and a circle? Anybody?
Spiral is
Continuous.
Continuous.
Circle is continuous.
A circle is also continuous.
But
our sword
finishing
has
is
no end.
discontinuous.
So you seem to come back to the same place,
Same
but
place.
actually you go deeper and deeper, no? So your spiral goes deeper or it goes up that way, all right? So this is what the spiral looks like. And there are 4 stages in this pastoral spiral. So when you're working with your own people or when you're working yourself, you have to know what the process is. For many years as a young priest, I worked with youth, with young people. And the first stage is the stage of awareness. So you've got to become aware. So you can live your life half asleep. You never reflect on it. You're never aware of your own life. You're never aware of your experiences. So you heard me the other day how I can tell stories. That's because I'm very aware of what's happening all the time. No? I'm very aware of what's happening around. I'm very aware of who's behind me. That goes on all the time. So if you're half asleep most of the time, you'll never be aware. And you won't know that God is there right with you because you're half asleep. That's the problem. So with the bishops, since we wanted them to become aware of the work of God among the poor, we told them they have to go through exposure, immersion. So exposure is like going to the zoo. You look at the animals there in the zoo, and the animals look at these animals, two-legged animals. We just look at each other. We are exposed to each other. But immersion is to get into their skin and see reality through their eyes. Can you understand the difference?
Yeah.
So exposure is like a doctor coming to examine a patient. It's very much from outside. Immersion is like a friend talking to a friend. Okay? You get into your friend's skin. So that's the awareness that you need about your life, about young people like yourselves. That is essential if you are going to reflect theologically, if you're going to reflect in faith. Heightened awareness. You must be very aware of what is happening with young people today, what's happening yourself, because you're rooted in that. All right? The second stage is analysis. So it's not sufficient to be aware. You have to broaden your awareness to understand how this is happening. So this is the stage of causes and effects. For instance, recently I was in Jammu, in the north of India, and I was teaching young people how to reflect. And I was giving them this example. A group of young people came to me and they said, "Father, this friend of ours wants to commit suicide. What should we do?" So I said, "Listen, I don't want to commit suicide. If your friend wants to commit suicide, you have to find out why your friend wants to commit suicide. Simple. Common sense, no? The way you are looking at it, is it common sense or not common sense? I'm not the one. How do I know the answer? I don't want to commit suicide. It's not my experience. So if it is somebody else's experience, I have to try and understand that experience. So go back and find out why that person wants to commit suicide. So then they went there and they talked to the person. And the person wants to commit suicide. This girl wants to commit suicide because at home she's left alone. Her parents are out at parties all the time. She's all alone. She has to study the whole day. She doesn't think life has any worth. So that's why she wants to commit suicide. Can you understand? So that's what your analysis is about. Give one more example. I gave this to the teachers. These are all real life examples. You've got to be aware all the time. A little girl came to the school and every day she used to come late. Every day her uniform was crumpled. Her shoes were not cleaned. And so the teachers used to make her stand outside, out of class. One day she fainted. And when she fainted, they said, why has she fainted? They discovered that she hadn't had breakfast. Now why didn't she have breakfast? Then they went to the house and they began to find out. And they found out every night, every evening, the father would come home drunk and he would throw his wife and children outside, out of the house. So they were sitting outside all the whole night. Then when it came in the morning, they would get into the house. So she had no time to iron her clothes or to polish her shoes, and that's why she came late. Are you all following me? So don't come with only this is happening. You have to also come with why is it happening? You have to broaden your understanding of what is happening. Once you do that, then you begin to do faith reflection. And here, what is God's challenge to you? Therefore, what is God asking you to do? And finally, then you begin your action plan. Your action plan, not for people, not for them, but, what's the word? With people. So you plan together. You don't plan for anybody. Alright? So that's your spiral. And you come back again to a heightened awareness of what is happening. At the center of all this is what we call contemplative prayer or silence. So we are used to prayer being Our Fathers and Hail Marys, no? Vocal prayer. You can also have unstructured prayer. You talk to God in your own words. Little Johnny prayed to God. Dear God, look after my mommy, look after my daddy, look after my brother, look after my sister, look after my friends, and God, please look after yourself, because if anything happens to you, all of us are finished here, you know. So that is unstructured prayer. You talk to God directly. Then you have meditative prayer. That's what you all were doing with us today. You repeat that, Jesus, have remember me when you come into your kingdom. They repeated that. Why? Because we had forgotten it or what? No, each time you repeat it, it goes deeper and deeper into your thoughts, and so that becomes your way of life. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. That becomes your way of life, and very often then you will repeat it during the day as the principle for your life. But contemplative prayer is the prayer of silence. So you need to have this sort of silence deep inside, because God doesn't get a chance to speak to you. You can't reflect theologically on God's challenge unless you're ready to listen to God. And so you need moments of silence. I used to be a chaplain to workers, and you would often find workers sitting and looking up. You ask them, what are you thinking of? Nothing. He's wasting his time. That's contemplation, you know. He's waiting for some insight, some moment when God will speak to him, some realization, some awareness. That's what he's waiting for. So you need moments of silence. If you've got your iPod all the time over there and you can't face silence, then you don't get a chance, give God a chance to speak to you. I don't know whether you can ever reflect theologically. You've got to have moments of silence in order to reflect theologically.